Well, hello everyone. I'm Colonel Jeremy Bell, the Garrison Commander for Fort Campbell, and welcome to this Facebook Town Hall session. This is a taped version of a Town Hall, and I'll give a little bit of background later on why that is. What I wanted to talk to you up front about first is talk a little bit about the coronavirus and its impact on the community. This is hard. This is unprecedented. It's not something that Fort Campbell has dealt with in the past. And each of us are trying to work our way through this crisis in our own ways. We're trying to do it as an installation to protect our population. You're trying to do it as a family, as individuals, to protect yourselves and your families. When we're dealing with this type of crisis, just by its very nature and just by the rules that the Army has put in place with stop move, the no travel, we're isolated. Not isolated in terms of the virus, but isolated in terms of we're not as connected with our community. We aren't as connected with our support network. We don't have the same ties or the same type of ties that we do with our families. And that's hard, and it puts a great deal of strain on us as individuals, us as families, and then absolutely us as a community. So what we're trying to do today is give you some tools, provide you some information on the crisis, on the virus, and its impacts on this community. Previous town halls have been very much focused on updates. So we've tried to give you as much information as we possibly could. We've tried to update you on new policies that were about to go into effect. And really, we were more about trying to answer your questions. This is obviously a pre-taped version, so we can't answer your questions, but a lot of your questions from previous town halls have fed the topics that we're going to talk about today. So, different structure. Really, this is about informing you, the audience. It's about informing individuals out there. It's about informing leaders and giving you tools that you can use to help your soldiers. I think when we're talking about a forum like this, we can't get to everybody's individual problems. But what we can do is give you a starting point. And we are best as a community when we can answer questions and help each other at the very lowest level. And the first step in doing that is to inform our population. That's what we're here to do today. But then it also requires that we have engaged leaders at every level and a community that wants to support each other and help where we can. And Fort Campbell is tremendous at this. There is no better community than Fort Campbell. We can always come together and solve problems. So I guess what I would like to do now is just kind of give you a perspective on how I deal with the coronavirus and the way I've kind of approached this with my family and me personally. I very much look at the coronavirus and its impact on the community like I do a deployment. And there's three things that stick out to me when I'm putting this together in my head. The first is I have to take a deployment day by day, and that's what we have to do here with the coronavirus. It doesn't do us any good to look long term when we don't truly know what the next steps are. So taking it day by day is important. The second is to fight early on to establish a routine and a rhythm to your life. Just by its nature, the coronavirus has thrown us our whole lives into an upheaval. So getting some level of normalcy back is important. And then the last is relying on others. And relying on others in this situation is different because we're no longer able to congregate as groups, but we can do it through other means, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about that. So the topics we have teed up for you today, we're going to talk a little bit about children. We're going to talk about families. We're going to talk about soldiers. And we're going to talk about self-improvement and physical wellness. Those are our general broad topics. Before we get into those topics, I'll do a brief introduction of our panel members. To my left is Colonel Murphy. He's the division chaplain and has been on Fort Campbell a long time, so welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
To his left is Sergeant First Class Emma Anderson. She's part of the Ready and Resilient team on Fort Campbell. Welcome.
Thank you.
And then we have in a satellite room Major Martinez, who is the psychologist for the division, and he'll weigh in on some key topics. So with that, I think I'm going to open up with Major Martinez, and I'm going to throw it over to him to talk a little bit about the clinical side of the coronavirus, and specifically a little bit about what does isolation mean for individuals and communities, and then its impact on the overall community of Fort Campbell. So over to you, Major Martinez.
Yes, sir. So just a little bit of background for me. I'm the division psychiatrist, and so I get to liaison between FORSCOM and the MEDEC a lot. And so I'm here just to help you all know what resources we have available to you. So a good place to start off, obviously, is Military One Source. Everyone knows where that is and probably is familiar with that. The reason why I point you all there to start off with is because it has a lot of good resources in terms of the most recent recommendations from the CDC, from the DOD, from DHA, and also from our government. And this is kind of not just limited to behavioral health issues. It's also has information for medical information and even financial things in particular, since all of these tie into kind of how people are feeling. And so, this is a new novel thing for us in terms of dealing with a pandemic. And so important things to remember are, again, is making sure that we're still making good decisions, and these are not normal times. It's normal not to feel super connected when you're isolated, and that can lead to a lot of issues further down the line in terms of development of behavioral health issues that actually do require some treatment in terms of seeing a therapist or even medication. And so really kind of the more important part here is making sure that if those things are happening, that you're kind of keeping track and actually reaching out to those resources that you need to reach out to. And so a good place to start, again, is the One Source, and followed by our own Fort Campbell website, where that also will have resources as far as local resources, the difference between active duty versus family members and their families.
Great, and thank you for that. Great perspective. So let's start with opening remarks, and what I'd like to do is throw it over to you, Murph, first. So,
all right,
if you can.
Well, I think when you mentioned a deployment, I think that really speaks to what mindset do we go into this crisis with, and Admiral Stockdale, who was a POW in Vietnam, he was a POW for 5 years. He said that the people who didn't make it were the blind optimists who kept on thinking, "Oh, I'll be out by Thanksgiving, I'll be out by Christmas." And the ones who made it steeled themselves for the reality of the situation, and they made adjustments. And so, just as you had talked about, like, fighting to establish your routine early. So, the Murphy family, we have this teenager who's in the house all day now, and he's home all day. And all right, what are we going to do about that? Well, we're going to make some adjustments to our routine. We're going to fight to establish the right routine so that school still happens, and then we're also going to keep a positive attitude about this. So, our son Josh is having to do all his classes online, and the schools have been great. They're actually, the DODIA schools are ahead of schools in other parts of the country. But here's the thing, this is good prep for college, because you do a lot of online classes for college. So, hey, let's look on the bright side on this. We're still getting school done, but we're also improving and getting ahead of the game for the future.
So taking advantage of the crisis.
Right. Let's take advantage of this and use it for self-improvement.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing is, and it's always my talking point, is religious participation, practicing your faith actively, is closely correlated with higher marital stability, better life satisfaction, lower substance abuse, lower domestic violence, lower everything your commander doesn't want you to do, it's correlated with practicing your faith. So practice your faith, and we can help you with that. We have all our services, save a couple of the much smaller ones, are online, and the belly button for all of that is the 101st and Fort Campbell Chaplain's Office Facebook page. And we will have all those services recorded and put on that page consistently every week for as long as this goes on.
Great. Thanks. Sir, First Class Anderson, what do you have for opening remarks?
So a lot of the topics that we talk about, being ready and resilient with everything, is we have different pillars that we like to talk about. So we'll touch upon each of them in the different topics across the scenario today. So the different pillars that we have is the social, your emotional well-being, your physical, your family, and also your spiritual side. So we'll hit up all those topics of different things. The R2 Performance Center has great resources for you, which we'll talk about. And we also have 14 different MRT skills that we can use to help us get through this time.
Awesome. So, and I think that's a focus for us. We're not only here to provide information, I think we're trying to get at what resources are out there that our soldiers, our families, individuals out there who are in an isolated state can tap into. So we'll absolutely try to focus on that. So let's get into our first topic, and that is children. I think this is a population that is absolutely affected by this virus. It is hard to explain to a child what a pandemic is. I think it's hard to for a parent to now that their children are home all the time to adjust to that, and those come with their own challenges. And I think it's important to start with the children first. I will just provide a little bit of perspective on schools. I think all of our schools right now, that's the ODEA on Fort Campbell as well as the schools off the installation, are really taking this week by week, and they're doing their assessments to see if it's viable to open in-person learning at any point in the future. Right now, we don't see that as a viable option, so schools are preparing for the long haul and doing distance learning for the foreseeable future. But that impacts both day-to-day schooling. It impacts how children learn, because everyone learns slightly differently. But it also impacts the tangible things, right? Those ceremonial things, like graduation is on parents' minds. Kids have gone to school for their whole lives, and at the end of it, you're supposed to have a commencement ceremony. We may not get to that point this year. So I would ask that parents out there, make sure that you're connected with your school through social media, through messaging, through calls to your school. And if your child is struggling in any way, reach out to your school first. There's other resources that we're going to talk about. But that's really all I wanted to say up front. I'm going to throw it over to you, Chaplain Murphy, just to talk a little bit about what's out there for parents to help their children through this.
Well, I think, first of all, each other, right? So we want to make sure that in our household, we always try and make sure that mom and dad are on the same page. And if we're not on the same page, then we get away from the kids, we get on the same page, and we present a united front to the kids. Because we're the adults, they're the kids, we're training the kids to be adults. So we want to make sure that that we're on the same page and we're supporting each other. We need to remember too, kids are going to adopt the parent's attitude. And again, it's just like a deployment. If the soldier is deployed and the spouse back home has a positive attitude and they're like, hey, look, life goes on, we're going to deal with this, you guys, and the rules haven't changed and we still do what we do, and we're just matter of fact about it, then it's much easier to keep everybody moving forward and stay on the same page. So kids adopt the parent's attitude, and then, hey, look, we still get up, we still get dressed, We still make our beds, and really consider doing school not in your bedroom, but like at the dining room table. So you've got a different spot where you go and do school. And then as far as resources go, there are military family life consultants at the schools, at each school, and they're confidential. They're not part of the healthcare system. They keep no records. They do short-term virtual counseling. If you call your school, the school can hook you up with the MFLAC at the school. Or if you call your unit chaplain, the unit chaplains have all that contact information, and can contact that school MFLAC for you. If your kids need someone to talk to other than you, or if you need someone to talk to regarding stuff going on with the school.
Do you have any specific examples of types of problems that children will face during this time? And if so, how do you generally deal with that, or what advice would you give family members?
I think it's probably the lack of social interaction for kids, but I still think it's important that now we've got to maintain social distancing, but that doesn't mean we can't go outside. So see families in our neighborhood riding bikes, and they're not playing football because that's going to violate social distancing, but they're out walking the dog. They're out. You have to get outside periodically, and then just letting kids connect with other kids, either through the phone. I'm not a super fan of video games, but you know what? There are video games where
absolutely,
hey, my son can connect with his friends where they're playing Call of Duty together, or whatever the game that they're playing now is, but they're all playing it together, they're all communicating, and they're all social distancing as well. But that's at least satisfying that need for connection.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. So parenting may change during the COVID crisis.
Yes.
And rules that were in place before may change, and you may have a different perspective now.
Yes.
So, great point. Over to you, Sergeant First Class Anderson. So from your point of view, what advice would you give parents who are trying to raise children during this crisis?
So each child is very different in the aspect of how they receive things and how they react to things. So every child be handled a little bit differently. For example, my daughter loves to talk. My son, not so much. So when I sit there and try to give them something to do, I try to cater to that a little bit and change my demeanor with the child that I have. What you also have to realize that each child is a different demographic. So when I'm talking about a high schooler, I'd be talking completely different than I would to someone who's still learning how to crawl versus a middle school child. So that would change the dynamic also of what kind of activities you can do right now, what kind of verbiage you would be talking to them about, what kind of chores they would have, maybe a different type of schedule that they would have. So one of the things that we can do is try to hunt the good stuff with the kids so they can see something good during this time. So you can have a journal. So both my kids have a journal, and they write down something different that they're doing every day, something that they saw that was cool, writing down just the overall aspect of what's going on. And then we kind of put a little bit of schoolwork into it to where they have to write, well, how many people are affected during the state from this day to this day. And then also being able to go into a graph into that later. So we kind of put some schoolwork into it so they understand that this is reality, but we have to be able to find that good stuff that's happening also. Some of the things that we've been doing in our neighborhood is a lot of kids are having birthdays right now. So how do you celebrate a birthday during social distancing? We have been able to find a huge amount of people who are willing to sit there and paint their sidewalk with chalk. So that child could go walk around and be able to see that. And we've had a couple of them that have been in tears because they were like, these people don't know me. How are they able to sit there and know that it's my birthday? So it's a very magical moment. A lot of people were sitting here and putting Easter eggs around for Easter for them to go find them. They're like, I've been with my parents all day. What's going on? So little magical moments like that is kind of something to keep them and bring the joy of what's going on right now. So.
Great. What about the physical side for kids? What's your advice to, obviously sporting, congregating together is not part of what we do in social distancing. So it's got to be more individual or pairs of individuals. So what would you give advice to parents on the physical side of this
So knowing that each child is very different, we have on our Facebook page an album for each demographic of child. So ones that are still crawling, ones that are in middle school, and then even the teenagers, because something my middle school is going to do, my teenager is not going to be so excited about.
Absolutely.
So we have different activities for them to go ahead and do on basic things that you would find around the house. Some water, some food coloring and milk, and learning how when you take a Q-tip and you put it in there with dish soap, how that reacts to everything. So giving them something to do. The physical activities, we have that also. So maybe you're sitting here and you're trying to get fit for the ACFT right now, but you can sit there and do push-ups, and then your younger one can crawl underneath of you or try to hop over you and do things with them also. So different dynamics, different things for each child.
Great. That's great insights. Thank you. So let's move on to families. Obviously, families all around the world are trying to cope with COVID-19, and everyone has to deal with that their own way and adjust, like we talked about, trying to find some level of rhythm, some level of routine in their lives, and that's difficult. So families have to navigate that individually, together as a family, and that's hard. So deconflicting schedules is difficult. We've talked in previous town halls. Mission essential means something different every day to every individual. So somebody who's not mission essential today could be mission essential tomorrow. And obviously that impacts people's lives because they can't then take their lives and schedule it out, right? So there's a lot of unpredictability in the military. At some point, we're going to go back to individual training. At some point, we'll go back to collective training. At some point, we're going to go back to full-on training for our wartime mission. And all these things, all these decisions have impacts on our families. So if you can, talk a little bit about how these stressors in our lives, specifically military lives, how they impact our families, and then some of the resources that are out there to help.
Well, I'll start off with a few of the resources. One is we have family life chaplains. You can call 798-3316, leave a message, and the family life chaplains will contact you back. Family life chaplains are specially trained. They've got a master's degree in marriage and family counseling. They're 100% confidential. And then also just, remembering many of the skills that you may have learned if you had gone on a strong bonds retreat before. Some of the really basic ones are speaker listener technique. Hey, if there's conflict, hey, it's my turn to talk. Okay, you have the floor now. It's your turn to talk.
Very familiar with that.
One thing that early on in our marriage, Sandy and I realized we needed to make it Jim and Sandy against the problem, not Jim against Sandy, because we're a team. So it's you and your spouse against the problem. And if the spouse is doing something that bugs you, let's not exaggerate or catastrophize. Let's just use the way of saying it like, hey, when you do this, it makes me feel this. And that way, you're just stating a fact. And then, you know what? Here's the thing. You're with this person. Now you're with this person more.
That's right.
But you know what? There are some things that may irritate you about your spouse that, you know what? Maybe it's just not worth fighting about. So Gary Chapman talks about this. He's the guy who wrote the 5 love languages. And when he first got married, his wife just never closed any of the kitchen cabinets. And then he'd have to go in the kitchen and close and he'd plot ways to get his wife to close the kitchen cabinets. And he worked himself up into such a lather about this. He was like ready to leave this woman over her not closing the kitchen cabinets. And finally, you know, he just felt the Lord speaking to him like, hey, look, man, you can either just close the cabinets and you've got a wonderful wife, or you can ruin your life over this. What are you going to do? And he's like, you know what, Lord, I think I'll just close the cabinets. So that's what he's done. And he still closes the cabinets today. And that's how it is. And so there are some of those things that it's just not worth fighting about.
That's right.
You know?
And nothing's insurmountable.
Yeah.
Sometimes it requires external help.
Yeah.
And we certainly have those. You bring up a good resource there that are willing to help and able to help. So great. How about on the ready and resilient side?
So the interesting to notice about is regardless of how long you've been married or how long you've been seeing someone, conflict will always come up. And it'll more so come up because you're now confined to a smaller area, just like a deployment that we mentioned earlier. So we have two different skills that we can talk about. So deliberate breathing, sometimes when you're getting ready to go into that conversation that you know is probably not going to go very well, just sit there and take those 1 or 2 breaths and figure out like, all right, I'm ready for this. Really think about what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. The second skill would be assertive communication. So we have a model that's called the ideal model. So it's where you identify the problem. Again, we can be sitting here talking about what's in the refrigerator or the lack of a refrigerator, but the other person's actually more frustrated about something else. So to actually identify what the actual problem is that you're about to argue about. Once you go through the actual identifying of that problem, then you would go into describing that problem into full detail, because we all know that there's under eaches that are really poking at it, and it might have been the icing on the cake that is now toppled off into the discussion that you're about to have. Then you want to sit there, like the chaplain said, is express how you feel. How is that bothering you inside that this is not happening? You still want to provide for your family, but you can't because now you're working all day and the refrigerator still has to be full because I'm still home with my children and I can't sit there and go grocery shopping because you're at work. So I have no one to watch the kids. Then ask for a realistic change and an outcome. So if we sit there and do this, this is what's going to happen, and come to some type of mutual agreement to try to make that change. And list the possible outcomes of what we can do to try to change it. Being aware that the assertive communication tool is not going to fix the problem, it'll get you closer to a better solution. So you might have to come back and change you went to one dynamic and then going back to, well, let's revisit because now we're talking about another problem. So you want to make sure that it's a very fluent model that you're using when you're using it.
Excellent. Any resources out there that you want to make note of on?
So we have our Fort Campbell Ready and Resilient page. We are doing different skills every single day and we're posting them. So that way they can go in there. Now what those skills do is they teach you the tip of the iceberg of a particular skill. If you want to get more of a deep dive or anything else, you can go ahead and reach us through the Facebook page, or you can call us. It's registered on the Facebook page also.
I'd also offer up that Army Community Service still offers their services too. So for our audience, just stay in touch with ACS if you have problems. They're honestly a good one-stop shop.
Yes.
If you give them a call or get on their website, they have linkages to every one of the resources that we're talking about here.
Yep. And you know, one other thing just to add to this too is forgiveness.
Good point.
Yeah, I'm going to do stuff that hurts my wife's feelings or offends my wife, and so we have to forgive each other. And sometimes you run into couples where they're keeping score on each other. You can't keep score. You're on the same team. You're not on opposing teams. The Bible pictures forgiveness as tearing up an IOU. You're not saying it doesn't matter. You're not saying it's okay. You're just saying, I'm not going to try and get back at you for that. And when you tear up that IOU and you let that debt go, it's not even imaginary, but that intangible debt go, you have now cleared the table and your relationship is back on. And then along with that is, you know what, if you have done something wrong, then humble yourself, apologize to your spouse, put the relationship back together, and drive on. And there you go. And again, when somebody apologizes to you, Well, think about no.
Be the bigger
You got
person.
to be the bigger person. You forgive them. They've already apologized. Tear up the IOU. Now you're back on the same team,
Absolutely.
and now you move on together.
And chances are you both feel better at the end
Yes.
of it. So. Great. Great perspectives again. Thank you for that. Let's move on to soldiers, because that's another population here that is going through life very much differently than the way they started off this crisis. A lot of folks are confined to the barracks. Some are off post, some are mission essential and can do their jobs. Others aren't, and they have to do something else. I guess to lead into this, I would say, first and foremost, you're a soldier 24 hours, 7 days a week. So maintain that discipline, maintain that appearance throughout this whole crisis. Second, I would say absolutely do PT every day. That is a soldier task that we can do every day. And then I would say third, for the individual soldiers, is take the opportunity to improve yourself. And we'll talk a little bit about how to do that and some techniques and tools to do that in this segment. But for the leaders out there, I would say don't abdicate your responsibility. And these are our NCOs and officers out there. There are creative ways to get at your individual and collective soldier skills that don't require physical presence in an area.
Yep.
And I would ask that soldiers out there and our leaders find those creative and critical ways to maintain readiness. We've tried to do a lot of that on the installation by making classes, individual classes, distance learning. But when we talk about a crisis like this, and certainly when you play this out over its duration, what we need is active leaders out there who don't abdicate their responsibility and say, well, I just can't. They have to be proactive, they have to be creative, and they have to figure out ways to connect with their soldiers and maintain readiness.
Yep.
So I'll start with the ready and resilient side. So if you could, just talk a little bit about that subject.
So right now we kind of want to have some optimism. We have a video about optimism on our Facebook page. We want to talk about the negative emotions that you're going through, the better health that you need to start looking at, because now some people are literally sleeping their day away because they're not important, which is not the case. Everybody brings something to the team and everybody is important. And we need everybody to stay ready and to stay resilient during this time. So when we go back, we can actually be ready to fight the fight that we have as our nation.
And ideally, you come back stronger than when you left, right? I mean, that's our goal.
Yes, very much so, sir. So we want to be able to maintain that hope and that confidence. Well, how exactly do you do that? By getting out there, doing something that is your craft, by doing 350-1. We have a link on our page of all the 350-1 that they can do. We've been seeing a lot of leaders get very creative of how do we get our soldiers to sit there and do something. So we actually have one unit that was using Call of Duty, and they were all on the same thing, and they were clearing rooms together, and they were able to talk. So it was a very interesting concept, but everyone's finding different ways to be able to connect to their soldiers still, even if they're in the barracks or they're at home or doing anything else. So
good. How about you, Chaplain? What do you have?
I think if I were in the barracks and just having to go through the standard restrictions that we have to go through, my picture for this would be the movie The Count of Monte Cristo. And if you've ever seen that, it's the recent one's got Jim Caviezel. He's locked away in this prison, but he connects somehow with another prisoner who accidentally digs his way into his room. But this other prisoner's got books, and he starts educating himself, and he comes out a far more capable guy than when he went in. And so think of yourself as a Count of Monte Cristo. You know what? I don't know anything about economics. Well, then get on Kindle or get on Audible, get Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell, and make it through. Or, one of my disciplines is I've got a 1-year Bible. 15 minutes a day will get you through the Bible in a year. So there are plenty of places, plenty of things you can do for self-development just as a citizen, as a man or a woman, to just take that time, find something out that you didn't know before, and then just as far as the physical training as well. If you're able to use your company, if your company's got like gym in a box or something like that, and you can do that while obeying the COVID-19 restrictions, then absolutely, and set some physical goals for you to do. Like, hey, I want to come out of this being able to deadlift 405, or I want to come out of this being able to, do 75 push-ups or something like that. These are all good ways to look at this and take advantage of the time to do self-improvement.
Awesome. Good messages. I like that. I will say that eventually we're going to come out of this, and we're going to, at the tail end of this, ideally be stronger than when we started, and you've given us some great tools to do that. I would like to cut over to Major Martinez to talk a little bit about what does recovery from this COVID crisis look like. Mm-hmm. So once we hit our peak, and we're not there now, but we will be soon, and we're on that downward trend. What does recovery look like, and what are some tools out there that we can use from a psychological standpoint to help us through that? Mm-hmm. So over to you, Major Martinez.
So coming out of COVID-19 in terms of behavioral health things that we can do. So an important part is to remember all the things that we used to do, just kind of even coming out of the house to get used to, getting back to school. For kids going back to school, getting back to work, just kind of all these other routines that kind of fallen by the wayside, and trying to get back into normal life in terms of kind of how you interact with other people, no longer having to have the 6 foot distancing, still being able to shake hands, and just several of the things that again that are missing currently in our virtual life, and really are important in terms of kind of making sure that you're able to connect socially again. Some things that may be important to do and just kind of keep in mind is once we start coming out of all of the restrictions here, is perhaps if there's issues that happen, if anyone's family members passed away or anything else like that happened, is actually making time to mourn in more kind of traditional ways versus just virtually, as a lot of these things are happening. Same thing with marriages that have been postponed or happened in a much smaller scale. It's important to kind of start thinking about how you're going to get back to normalcy in this way. And so it really kind of, again, it's just kind of remembering how we were doing things before we all went into social isolation, and remembering that there's more than just virtual life.
Well, great. Thanks for that commentary and some great advice there. So I'm going to throw it back over to you, Sergeant First Class Anderson, just to talk a little bit, just give us a brief summary again of what we talked about up front, which is the pillars of ready and resilience. Mm-hmm. And then if you could go into our next topic a little bit of what does self-improvement and mastery look like?
So back to our pillars that we talked about. So the social aspect, being able to connect with someone. We mentioned being able to talk, FaceTime, going around walking, waving to somebody, finding maybe the teddy bear in the window, kind of have some type of connection with everybody else. Your emotional well-being, make sure you're getting enough sleep, make sure you're eating healthy, because that matters a lot too, especially that we all have to learn maybe how to cook for the first time. And be able to do some deliberate breathing and have that emotional aspect also, and have that higher being that you can go ahead and go towards. So that kind of falls in with the spiritual also. Okay. Then the physical aspect that we'll talk about in a little bit. And then the family aspect is, how do you connect with your family? How do you sit there and work as a family now that you're in those confined areas, and what can you actually do?
Absolutely.
Going to the self-improvement portion, for soldiers, we talked about the ability to do 350-1 training. We talked about some physical fitness, skill port, promotion points, all online. You don't need anybody. Learn a new skill.
Yeah.
Come out of this being a lot better than what you started with, and learning something else. And if they are allowing you to do some college, then do some college also.
Absolutely.
So we have a very specific goal that we can use during this time, and that's called goal setting. We have a 7-step model. You say, at the end of this, I want to be able to max my ACFT. What can I actually do and work through those steps? To be able to work through those steps, you can go ahead and, again, contact us at the Fort Campbell Ready and Resilient page. You can give us a call, or you can contact your own MRTs. So we have over 2,000 MRTs on Fort Campbell right now. They are already been embedded into the units. We've been training them. This is not something new to them. And then if they need some help and assistance, they can go ahead and give us a call also, or contact us. And we can also help them through maybe some of the different skills that they can have, or if they have any other questions. Being able to do that, you're enabling the MRTs to help you, and most of them already know them.
Right. Great. I mean, I didn't realize there were that many. That's
Yes.
a pretty good network to rely upon. So,
Yes.
Again, talking about leaders and tapping into resourcing, that's one thing a squad leader can tap into, and just get some broad left and right limits, as well as guidance on how to do squad PT, even though you can't come together as a squad maybe.
Yeah.
Great.
We also have right now some virtual training that we're doing. So as
Absolutely.
a squad or a platoon level, the squad leader can contact us, and we would have a 4-week training that we're setting up for them to be able to do,
That's
specific to their dynamic and their jobs and what they're doing. And that's what our performance experts that do all the time. And when they call us, we actually have embedded performance experts in all of our battalions and our brigades.
That's awesome.
So when they call us, we'll go ahead and regurgitate them straight to their performance expert. So some of them might have used them in the past, but we're still here and we're ready to help.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Awesome.
Over to you, Chaplain.
I would just reiterate, what attitude do you go into this with? Is this a burden, or is this an opportunity? And are you hoping it ends tomorrow, or have you prepared for the long haul? Stay connected to your religious faith. And then within the house, practice forgiveness, practice apologizing if you need to reconnect those relationships where you may have stepped on some toes. And then make sure that you're in that routine where mom and dad are on the same page. And even if you're in the house all day, you're getting up, you're getting dressed, you're making your bed, you're not just sort of living in your bedroom and existing, but you are purposely getting up, changing locations, and doing the things that tell your body and your mind that, no, I am now engaged in doing school.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great advice. Let's get to the last one, and that's the physical wellness side. And I'll start with Ready and Resilient. How can folks take care of themselves physically during this time?
So keep in mind, this is not just the soldier, this is the spouse, this is
That's
the
right.
child. This is everybody has to stay physically fit of some sort during this time. The Army Wellness Center is doing a great job of producing videos every day and challenges for the physical aspect. We are also on our page doing videos, and we are using the mental skills to be able to help you get through that exercise of, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this alone? You're not alone. Everybody's doing it. We also, in our albums, everyone has a duffel bag. Put something in the duffel bag, it now becomes a weight, and you can put it over your head, and you can do different exercises that way. So we've got an entire page strictly for ACFT and just regular exercises for all age dynamics to be able to do.
Awesome. How about you, Chaplain? Anything on the physical side?
Well, so the Murphys are blessed with a garage gym. So my son is doing Wendler 531. He's almost got his deadlift up to 300. So, and you know, it varies on what equipment that you have. But I think you know, having the goals. And here's the thing: a Western way of looking at people is that we are a soul that is housed in a body. And yeah, that's true, but the two are very intimately connected. And your body affects how your mind and your soul are doing, and your spirit, your soul, your mind affect how your body's doing. So you gotta take care of your body. It's something God gave you, and do take care of it, because it's going to impact how you feel, how you get along with people, how you act during the day, and how you treat others.
Awesome. Great. I'm going to move into kind of closing remarks, and I'll give you guys a moment to just think about what message do you want to leave our audience with. But I'm going to start with Major Martinez. So over to you, Major Martinez. What are your parting thoughts on this session?
For mine, again, so if there are any behavioral health issues that come up, please reach out for help. The resources are there. We're here to help you all out, and we can only help the people that reach out to us. So that's kind of, I think, the most important thing in all of this. If there's any confusions or concerns, the resources are there. We may not always have the answer, because this is a very novel thing, but we are here for you.
Great, thank you. Let me start with Ready Resilient. So, a parting thought or comment.
So the R2 Center has great resources for you, not just now, but all the time. These are not skills that you just use during a crisis. What you can also do is come to our page, see what we have. If you have questions, reach out to us. Whether you're the soldier, you're the spouse, you're a family member, reach out. Nobody is in this alone. And I think that's the biggest thing we like to push forward with that.
Awesome. Over to you, Chaplain.
So your unit chaplain is there for you, and you don't have to be religious to go to the chaplain. I think all our soldiers know that. Our chaplains, before this crisis, our chaplains, battalion chaplains, were out road marching, out during field problems, showing up at the live fire range, etc. They're there connecting with soldiers. They're still reachable, and you can still call your chaplain and talk to them. And then we have a variety of other resources that chaplain can assist you in connecting to. But I think really the parting thought is, hey, what is the attitude we go into this with, and what is the attitude we're going to adopt? We have resolved, my family's resolved, that we're going to come out of this stronger and more capable than when we went into it. We're going to take advantage of an opportunity rather than look at this as a burden. And I think if we look at this as an opportunity, we're going to be able to come out of this stronger.
Awesome. Yeah, great advice. I think I'd like to end where I started, and that was we have a pretty amazing community here on
Yes.
Fort Campbell, and there's very little that we can't do as a community when we come together. And I use community more broadly too. It's not just the community within the gates and those that live outside the gates. It's our community with our local and regional partners.
Absolutely.
This is a team, and we pull together when times are tough, and you don't have to do this alone. I'll use an example that just happened to me last night. My neighborhood got together and put a bunch of signs out on my lawn and my house, and encouraged me and said thank you for all that you're doing, and that made a huge difference. It gave me energy, it gave me a boost, and it meant a lot to me. And what I'll close with is, you never know when you're making a difference in someone's life.
That's right.
So reach out, be a friend, be a part of this community, and we'll make a difference and get through this together.
Amen.
So
Awesome.
thank you, everybody. This is great perspectives, and I appreciate your time this morning.
Great. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Yeah, great. Thanks.